if you're telling them I want to get something for $500,000 and leaving out the maintenance fees, they add the $425 in, and now you're at $400. So it can make like a very big difference.
That's actually a great point for people to be aware of. What is up, you guys? Matt McKeever here again with Emma. And so we're going to be chatting today just what is the difference between buying a condo versus a house. So I've never bought a condo before. Thankfully Emma has. She deals with a lot of them with her clients here in downtown Toronto. So we're just going to kind of talk through. And so let's kind of go in just kind of sequential order. So when you're looking at buying a condo, I assume that negotiating is just a little bit different with condos because you can actually get like apples to apples comparisons, whereas with like a freehold house, unless you're in the exact same subdivision and they haven't made many modifications, you know, there's always going to be a lot of wiggle room. So how do you approach negotiating with a condo?
So with condos, it's pretty straight up. I mean, most of the condos here, if you look downtown, have quite a few units in each. So there's usually one or two comps that will be more or less like a direct comparison. Where you're doing minor adjustments for, you know, maybe the parking or a locker. Or you know, if someone's done upgrades versus not done upgrades. Whereas with traditional freehold houses, we're looking at lot sizes, we're looking at bathroom, but I mean bathrooms can also be a thing there as well. So I think there's less in terms of variations that we're going to be looking at, because there's usually more of a direct comparable in the last 3 months that have sold for most condos downtown. It's obviously not the case for every single one, but in most there's usually more direct comparables to look
at. So like any tips for people when they're negotiating, maybe trying to get buy a condo below that other comp that's directly in the building? Like, are you looking at, what are you kind of pointing out at?
So I think that in a more balanced market, it might not necessarily be the case. It's more the case now than it was last year, but call it view and floor height, right? So big components, I think, for condo buyers, just going off kind of like the main elements, would be like, does it have outdoor space or does it not have outdoor space? Even my balcony is tiny, but it makes a big difference for a lot of people, because if you're gonna sell to a smoker and there's no outdoor space, like they're probably off the table for you at that point in time, right?
And so you mentioned floor height, so I literally don't know. It's more valuable higher up, or?
So there's sort of like this subjective element to it, but I would say, you know, ground floor versus being on the third floor there can be a big differential in terms of negotiating. So if you're, you know, for me, if I had a buyer and we were looking at something on the ground floor and a comp on the third floor, I would be trying to go for a little bit less money based on the fact that, like, security reasons, resale value, all that kind of stuff, I would try and go a little bit lower for a ground floor condo.
So like if you're looking at, say, like the 10th floor or the 30th floor, is it really just going to come down to the view specifically, or what will...
Yeah, for sure. I think the unobstructed view, regardless of the view, let's say, like here we've got a great view, but if I didn't have a great view, the most important component would be, am I looking at somebody else changing, which could be or not be a bad thing. It's like, am I looking directly into somebody else, or do I not have a great view, but at least I'm a little bit unobstructed and I have natural light? Like, that makes a huge difference for people, so I would try and utilize that into my negotiation as well, because that is a big factor for a lot of people.
Gotcha. And then so when it actually comes time to like sit down, put our offer in on the condo, what's the difference between, I've never bought a condo before, so I know exactly what to do when I'm buying a single family house, but condo? So many of the elements are the same. There is a different form. So there's a condominium resale form. I'm not sure what the form number is, but we can find that if you want. So there is a condo resale form. So some of the major differences are, is your parking, you'll include one parking spot or whatever it is with the house, but here you're going to have a designated parking number and a designated locker number. Is that actually owned by you, or is it exclusive use to the building? Like the building owns it, but you have the right to utilize that as your owner kind of thing. So there's differentials in terms of that. And so there's big implications to that if it's the one versus the other?
Like, I wouldn't be able to sell my condo if it was I wouldn't be able to sell my parking space, sorry. If it was exclusive use, right? And I mean, parking downtown right now on average is about $50K just for the parking spot.
So like technically with a condo, if you own the parking space, you could choose to sell that parking space?
I could, Typically the rule is, for most condos anyways, you can only sell the parking space to somebody else who owns the building. So you would have to have an agreement of purchase and sale saying, I'm an owner here in order for me to transfer it over to you. But if you have an exclusive use parking spot, you have the $50,000 benefit versus somebody else in the resale portion of it, but you can't sell it separately.
Gotcha.
The other thing would be maintenance fees. Like, so you're going to have a portion on there for maintenance fees. Most condos downtown will include, this is not a hard and fast rule, but most will include everything but hydro typically.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact year, but I think it was after 2007 or something. The government here said you have to pay, it's a mandate, but you have to pay your own hydro after 2007. So don't expect anything newer to have hydro included. For most smaller condos, I mean, if there's 2 people living, like we're 700 square feet.
Yeah.
We're like 50, 60 bucks a month.
Yeah.
65 bucks if it's like high.
And so when going to put in that offer on a condo, are you like reserve funds? Like how much research are you doing on that?
Yeah, so my typical rule of thumb is do not buy a condo without reviewing the status certificate in advance. So,
do you mind just status certificate?
Yeah, so status certificate is more or less utilized as kind of like a home inspection equivalent for a condo. So you can do a home inspection on a condo if you want. Most people don't. Most people get a status certificate instead. If you're going to do a home inspection, still get the status certificate. But it's basically like a, couple 100-page document that your lawyer is going to review for you that's going to give you all of the juicy elements about the building that you really want to know. So we're going to talk about, it will talk about the reserve fund, which is basically like a giant savings account for everyone in this building for repairs that need to happen. So you want to make sure that you as an accountant would love a status certificate because there's full financial breakdowns in terms of, what's coming up in terms of repairs, what's going on now, what's happening in 3 years from now typically. So you want to make sure that the amount that's in the reserve fund is adequate to carry those costs.
Yeah. Because
in the event that your reserve fund is not adequate to carry those costs, the building will typically issue something called a special assessment.
Yes.
And that means like on top of your maintenance fees, you're getting an extra fancy bill.
A major bill.
Yeah, it can be major. This also brings me to another point with how many units you have in your building. So a lot of people here really like the boutique buildings because you're like, oh, I'm living in kind of a communal space, but I like to live in a smaller, more boutique-y building where I might know most of the neighbors. There's 50 versus 1,000.
Yeah.
It can be great if it's very well managed. It can be an absolute nightmare if it's not managed well at all, because if a special assessment comes through for a roof, oftentimes the roof to change this one and that one cost the same, but you're splitting it with like however many fewer people, so the bill's going to be proportionally bigger for you, right?
Yeah.
So it's something to.
And so when trying to figure out if that reserve fund is adequate, like is that something that you're just taking on yourself? Is that something your lawyer tells you? No, the lawyer
takes it on for you. I would say, it's something that most agents have seen. I've probably seen like 1,000 more. So I could probably, most condos downtown, we could not look at them together and I can tell you, I've seen that one in the last 3 months. It's in pretty good shape. But the rule is the condition is on there for your lawyer's review. Your lawyer will typically review it pretty in depth. There's kind of like a summary sheet that will give you an indicator of what the rest of the information is.
Yeah.
So they can typically skim through it and say, okay, yeah, the first couple pages look pretty good.
Gotcha.
And then if there's any indicator that there might be a red flag or a yellow flag in some portion of it, you can go and look. It's kind of like an indices, I guess. Kind of, right? Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so then when it comes time to actually like close on the property, is there a significant dip? I guess too for financing. Is it a similar process for financing?
It's very similar for financing. Most of the lenders want they might actually want a copy of the status certificate.
Yeah.
So even in the event where your agent, let's say if you don't go in with the status certificate condition, you're going in firm because you've seen it before, you've reviewed one in the past. I don't recommend that, but if you want to do that, do whatever you want. Most lenders will still want a copy of the status certificate because in the status, most of the documentation is actually for like the building specific, whereas very little information is about your unit specific. Yes. So your unit specific information is like this, and the rest is like this on the building. So the bank typically wants your specific condo unit information to make sure that the owner has paid their maintenance fees and that you're not assuming any debts to the condo corp. To make sure that the maintenance fees that they've listed on the listing are actually the maintenance fees or whatever, right? So Regarding the alternative types of financing, no. But when you're applying for a pre-approval, you need to tell the lender that you're looking for a condo because they need to factor in maintenance fees
Right.
With your affordability, right? So I think it's right now like every $425 worth of debt payment, whether that's like a car payment or maintenance fees or whatever, is typically around like $100,000 in affordability that you can get on your mortgage, right?
Yeah.
So if you're telling them I want to get something for $500,000 and leaving out the maintenance fees,
Yes,
they add the $425 in, and now you're at $400. So it can make like a very big
Yeah, that's
differential,
actually a
right?
great point
So,
for people to be aware of.
yeah, that you need to let them know, otherwise your numbers are skewed on the back end.
Yeah. So then when it comes to actually close on the condo, is that different at all, or is that straightforward?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're usually going to have your couple buyer's visits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I usually recommend going a couple days before, make sure the appliances
just
are
kinda check
working,
it
or whatever
out.
you have included in your offer. But regarding closing, the only sort of other elements that you need to know are like you need to have your pre-authorized form set up for your maintenance fees before.
Okay.
Before you actually close. You might need to get a bylaw. The bylaws and the rules will typically be in the status certificate. But if there's anything else that the property manager needs to be filled out, like you need to make sure that you have that new residence form or package done ASAP.
Gotcha. And then, so after you've closed on it, is there really anything else? You've kind of set up your
Book the
pre-authorized
elevator.
payments. Oh, okay.
The elevator is definitely one. So these things tend to book up really quickly, especially on like the last weekend of the month or first day of the month, right?
Yeah.
So when you're moving, if you are like, hey, I'm closing in 3 months from now, but I'm closing on the 28th, like you should try and book it now.
That's actually a really good point at the end.
I've run into some issues.
So I think that was a great crash course, guys. If you haven't bought a condo, but you're thinking about it, like myself, I think that that's a great resource. Obviously, there's a lot more we still need to learn about. We're going to have a few more videos coming out on condos, though. But if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. And until next time, remember, making money's a team sport. There's more than enough money in this world for us to all make it. But if you're not saving it, I mean, like, what's the point? Thanks, guys. Bye.